Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. Welcome to the basic guide of unconsolidated undrained triaxial testing module. Standard accessories for UU testing. The usual setup for triaxial testing with three main valves: the cell pressure, back pressure, and pore pressure. Ideally, this is a recommended triaxial setup dedicated only for unconsolidated undrained testing. We do not need any accessories for the back pressure and also pore pressure setup. We can just close the two valves. The triaxial cell with the top cap without the back pressure line connector. Here is the triaxial frame with the load cell connect to the digital display and a digital dial gauge for displacement measurement. In this system, the triaxial frame works in a standalone mode. UU is a simple testing. We do not require any computerized automatic data acquisition. We can see that this is a dedicated UU setup where we only have one pressure controller and one triaxial frame with load cell and digital dial gauge. Apart from the triaxial equipment, we also require a reliable and quality DR water supply system. Place the plastic disc on the pedestal. Place the soil sample onto the pedestal on top of the plastic disc. Rubber membrane installation kit. Insert the membrane into the stretcher. Fold both ends of the rubber membrane properly. Use the suction ball to suck the air trapped between the rubber and the inner wall of the stretcher. Slowly lower it down until it covers up the whole soil specimen. Release the suction pressure and the rubber membrane will securely wrap tight to the soil specimen. Roll up the top end of the rubber membrane and roll down the lower end of the rubber membrane as it grips to the pedestal. Remove the membrane stretcher. The whole rubber membrane is now securely fitted, enclosing to the soil specimen. Use the O-ring tool to mount the rubber O-ring. Slide the O-ring tool through the assemblage. Release one of the rubber O-ring at the bottom. Make sure that the rubber O-ring locks to the pedestal and not to the soil specimen or in between the boundary of the pedestal and the soil specimen. Place another plastic disc on top of the soil specimen. After that, place the top cap on top of the plastic disc. Slide the O-ring tool that's still with the second rubber O-ring and then release the second rubber O-ring to the top cap. Put away the O-ring tool. Make sure that the rubber O-ring locks to the top cap and not to the soil specimen or in between the boundary of the top cap and the soil specimen. Carefully roll down the upper end of the rubber membrane as it covers up the rubber O-ring, and also carefully roll up the lower end of the rubber membrane as it covers up the rubber O-ring. Apply some vacuum grease onto the base of the triaxial cell. Lock the prospect cell tightly to the base. Adjust the loading ramp till it touches the top cap. Loosen the bleed valve at the top of the cell. For UU testing, open up the cell pressure valve in order to fill up the triaxial cell with water from the DR water tank. The bleed valve remains open during the filling up of the triaxial cell with water. Please ensure the whole cell is fully filled up with water. Close the cell pressure valve and also close and tighten the bleed valve after the cell is fully filled with water. Disconnect the tube connection from the water tank. Connect the tubing from the pressure controller to the triaxial cell via the cell pressure valve. Make sure that the pressure controller has been filled up with water. Connect the tubing from the pressure controller to the triaxial cell via the cell pressure valve. In addition, we can also check the reading sensitivity of the load cell reading by adjusting the stage either up or down. Make sure that the displacement dial gauge is set properly on the stem and free to move up and down and give positive and negative reading when it is pushed up or released. That means the dial gauge is ready to be used. Recheck when both load cell and displacement dial gauge are ready, then both readings can be set to 0. Set the cell pressure to 50 kPa and pressurize the triaxial cell. For a 50 mm diameter sample, set the loading rate to 1% strain per minute, which is 1 mm per minute. Sample will yield at 20% strain, which is 20 mm. The rate can be set manually by using the keypad. During testing, the stage moves up at the rate of 1 mm per minute and thus shearing the soil specimen. During testing, the dial gauge shortens as the stage moves up. Observe and monitor the displacement reading and also the load cell reading. Record all the data at displacement intervals of every 0.5 mm. Once the soil sample has reached its failure point, stop the test. Reverse the stage so that it returns to the original position. Apply the cell pressure to 0 kPa. After the pressure becomes 0 kPa, close the cell pressure valve. Disconnect the tubing from the pressure controller. By using another tube, connect it to the cell pressure valve. This is to channel out the water out from the triaxial cell. Open the bleed valve so that the atmospheric pressure helps to drain out the water from the triaxial cell. Then the water will flow out from the cell via the cell pressure valve. Once the cell is completely drained, carefully dismantle the cell and carefully remove the soil from the rubber membrane. This is an example of the datasheet for recording the UU data. Graph plot for testing 1. Shear stress against percentage of strain. Observe the deviator stress at failure. Graph plot for testing 2. Shear stress against percentage of strain. Observe the deviator stress at failure. Graph plot for testing 3. Shear stress against percentage of strain. Observe the deviator stress at failure. From the test, we could obtain and compile the value of cell pressure and the axial stress from the 3 UU tests. We can plot the Mohr circles and thus plot the shear envelope. The undrained cohesion and the angle of friction of soil can be obtained from the graph. We have come to the end of the basic guide of unconsolidated, undrained triaxial testing module. Thank you very much for watching. Till we meet again, wassalam and salam hormat.
And that's all, folks.